Byrne, CEO and Executive Director of Square Up International. Thanks a million for coming into the studio to talk to us today.
Thanks, Anne. Delighted to be here and looking forward to the conversation.
We might just start by, for anybody who's not familiar with you, just to explain to us exactly who Square International are and, maybe a little bit about the global operations today.
Thanks, Anne. Yeah, so Square at a global level is a $50 billion publicly limited company. It was founded in 2009 by Jack Dorsey. In effect, it was founded out of something that at that point was revolutionary, but today would seem, well, this is what we do. And that was to make and take payments on your phone. So they invented a small device that plugged into an iPhone, and effectively it let businesses easily make and take payments. And from that one single idea has grown a business that, as I say, now has a $50 billion market capitalization, but also has a whole range of software and hardware that really is about making business simple. And it lets people take payments. Our ethos is to never let a seller miss a sale. And it tries to make things that are very complex, very, very simple. So if I was running a local business here and I wanted to be able to take payments in different ways, well, now I can use Square's platform. And as easily as I can take a payment, I also have a whole other suite of tools with really, really well-designed hardware that just takes some of the complexity out of running a business. So I can put my inventory on it. I could run a loyalty program from it. I can even manage my staff and teams from it. And we have millions of customers around the globe, huge business in the US. And more recently, we've entered the European market as well.
And tell us a bit more about the European operations. And am I right that the Dublin is the European HQ?
Yes, that's right. So Square has had its European headquarters in Dublin since 2016. We would have gone live in the Dublin market or the Irish market in 2021. We've also launched in France and in Spain, and we've been live in the UK since about 2017. And here in Ireland, I think we employ about 300 people at the moment, covering all those markets. And as you can imagine, it's a very diverse, multinational type business. So we have people with backgrounds from completely different profiles and coming from different geographies. So our purpose here in Europe is to really try and grow that Square brand and get that set of solutions as available to as many European customers as possible. We've got people based all over the country here. And typically we've focused on trying to make things as easy as possible for local businesses. And Square really believes that local is a type of superpower. And, I know we're in an IDA office here, but if you think about it, 99% of businesses in most countries are still typically SMEs. And that's as true for France as it is for the UK, as it is for the US, as it is for Ireland. And at the heart of what Square does is this concept of economic empowerment, which is trying to take away the complexity of running that business and give really modern, cutting edge tools to those individuals and businesses so they can have the same advantages that much bigger multinational businesses would have.
I love it. And I want to come back to that actually in a little bit around the technology. But before I do that, I'd love to, we like to, fairly early on get a sense of the human behind the leader. So will you just tell us a little bit about your journey to Square?
Of course. I always, when I'm speaking at conferences or that, tend to introduce myself as a reformed banker, or maybe in some cases a banker still seeking redemption. When I graduated from a politics and business degree in Trinity College, I joined a banking graduate program. And I never had a burning desire to become a banker, but I did know that I wanted to do something international that would challenge me and that would let you be part of something a little bit bigger than yourself, and really be connected to much more purpose. So I spent a number of formative years working in different countries. I was doing startups in Germany. We were running a corporate bank in London. I actually started helping businesses in Eastern Europe, out in Ukraine and other accession countries, to help their banks become part of the European Union. And then as time went on and I had family, we moved back from London to Ireland in about 2008, just in time for the financial crisis. So I would have spent a lot of time, really being part of the team at Bank of Ireland to try and get to grips with that and bring the bank back from where it was to getting itself recapitalized, becoming back into private ownership, and then moving it back into that growth trajectory again. And from there, I would have run a number of teams and businesses. I was CEO of the mortgage bank here for a number of years. I was leader of the business bank in Bank of Ireland. And then just over a year ago, the opportunity to join Square to lead their European business came up. And, knowing what I knew about them in terms of their desire to be innovative, the real purposefulness that we talked about in terms of that economic empowerment at the heart of the business, and that real ability to make technology the solution rather than it being a constraint attracted me. So I was delighted to be able to start with them last year.
Very good. Very different, I assume. It must have felt quite different, did it?
Well, it's funny. In some ways, there's huge new learning. So you're part of a global team. So you have to learn quickly how to deal with multiple time zones. The ways of doing business can be quite different, very, very fast pace, as you'd imagine. And a business that when it commits to something in terms of its strategic direction, it really commits. And the hard decisions around what should be subtracted or stopped get made, and then resources are allocated and dedicated to those things to make them happen. And then in other ways, there's a lot of similarities. I mean, ultimately, I think all leadership comes down to people, because we're all people, right? And everybody has their own, needs, motivators, things that drive them. And part of that job is really being able to learn how to navigate with that, and then make sure that you're able to set the pace, the direction, where you want to bring the business, and really communicate that in a good way. And I find there was a lot of similarities in terms of just some of the approaches needed for that.
And you set up my next question beautifully in a way, because I do want to ask you, in your view, what are the attributes of a really good leader, or what does good leadership look like?
I think for me, good leadership is really around understanding those core drivers for individuals and people. But what we're seeing in the world today is somewhere that's moving much quicker. So there's so much more ambiguity, there's so much more pace and uncertainty. And I think with leadership now, it's no longer what was good for leadership a number of years ago, which was very, could you make decisions quickly? Could you act almost independently? You have to be really good at bringing people together, particularly people with diverse backgrounds, to challenge the thinking. And I think a lot of leadership comes down to being able to build teams, and to get those teams who'll have different perspectives to you, who'll have different insights to you. You won't always agree on them, but being able to bring those together to form that strategy and direction for the business, then put it into place, and then make sure that that's communicated and then managed and held to over time.
And I suppose, speaking of teams, I mean, there's plenty of competition for talent the world over and in Ireland. I mean, how do you go about getting the best talent, and how do you go about retaining them?
I think that's one of the core challenges of business, full stop. So I think context is really important, and also sometimes the brand that you have. So certainly within Square, it has a very strong brand in terms of trying to create value for its sellers, being able to really harness cutting edge technology and give something back. And that acts as a really strong attractor. But it's also a very strong brand in terms of diversity of profile of the people that it has. So here in Ireland, in 2023, I think we were winner of the best workspace for SME size businesses in Ireland, for women. And that helps us create that type of diversity and attracts a broader pool of candidates. Square also works on a fully remote basis. So whilst we have office locations here in London and all across the US, many people can work from home at all times. And that tends to give you a much broader pool of people that you can pull from. And obviously retention is key. And, retention always comes down to key things. Do people feel valued? Are they part of a team? Have they got opportunities to be able to grow? And how consciously are you making that effort to try and create those opportunities for people and give them a career path that helps them? And sometimes that will help people get to a point where they may want to go and leave and do something else. But that gives you that alumni that then helps to add more referrals coming back.
I suppose coming back to Square as well, and you would be seen as the friend of the smaller company. I mean, I don't know, even at the weekend, I think I must have used little square machines about 4 different times at various retailers and farmers markets and things. But I mean, tell us about the opportunities for small business now through technology, now that it's become less expensive, more accessible. I mean, they don't need to fear it. Would that be fair to say, small businesses?
I think there's huge opportunity for small businesses. Just firstly, I would say Square covers businesses of all sizes,
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
and all enterprises. Its heart and its origin was definitely on the small business side, and that's something that we continue to hold really dear. But we do provide a much broader range
Yeah.
of services to businesses of all sizes and scale around the globe. I think fundamentally, fintech and fintech and technology has really started to open up more possibilities for small businesses. Like if you go and talk to them and do direct research or look at a lot of the research that's been published, many small businesses still feel really frustrated by the quality of services they get. And that's really what's provided the driver behind that for that whole explosion in fintech over the last number of years. And that can come down from transaction costs are too high, processes are just too complex, the entry point is too hard to get into. And that's something that Square always puts at the heart of how it designs solutions and products, which is how do we make those complex things simple? So for small businesses growing now, particularly if you're with somebody like Square or, for payments and business operating systems, that can allow you to access platforms that you just could not have gotten a number of years ago. So you're getting the equivalent ability to be able to make and take those payments, to run your business with the same level of insight and analysis that much, much larger companies have. And really, in some ways, it's a bit of an overused term, but it's almost democratizing access to technology for small businesses. And we see a huge opportunity to continue to unfold. Because there's lots of really poor practices still out there, and lots of people still haven't made this leap to access it. And if I look at, say, Europe versus the US, I think we can see the US has set the direction and pace in terms of the digitization of underlying businesses themselves. And then when you come into Europe, there's still a little bit to go on that journey, and that differs by country and context and sector and in whichever way that you want to cut it. But it does allow a great platform that as people take advantage of this, that they can then start to scale the business way beyond what that same pool of resources would have let them do even 5 or 6 years ago.
Sticking with technology then, I mean, what are the big developments that would have affected your operations at Square in recent years? I mean, obviously there's the ubiquitous AI question, but I mean, anything else either? What are the big developments in recent years that have changed how you work with your customers?
Yeah, I was talking at a conference, Money 2020, about 6 weeks ago, and you're right, AI is everywhere, okay, and people range from saying, you will, if you're not using AI, you will be displaced by somebody who is using it. Certainly at Square, it's one of the 4 core pillars that we have. We call it Grow with AI, and really that's about leveraging that technology. Again, to go back to the key things that are important. Are you taking pain away from your end customer? Are you making it easier for them to do business? So we would have started with it by using it ourselves first, eating our own cooking, if I could put it that way. Does it help us take out cost within our business? Does it help us be that little bit more efficient and effective in terms of all the data that we have? And because Square has such a large amount of data from all of the various payments, how do we put that to best use for our sellers or our customers? So typically, if I look to the US, they can do things like generative AI, where if you're a restaurant and you want to set up a new menu, it will almost help generate some of the images and the descriptions for you. Again, just trying to take some of that time away. And then if we look to how it might help things like customer service, it can provide better prompts or better solutions. And again, everything is about how do we make it simpler for a customer or seller to not spend their time working in their business, but actually to work on their business and to really help it start to grow.
Good, and we're here in IDA HQ here in Dublin. So and they're a partner on the series. So I'd love to get a sense of how you have worked with IDA and how IDA supports you over the years. Beyond arriving in Ireland and all that.
Yeah, no, I mean, I must say, I find the support systems from IDA really helpful. They've long been a part of what we've had with Square here in Ireland. And they provide a whole range of solutions outside, as you say, the, come into the country and get set up. And that can range from, helping retrain people, providing insight and thought processes as to what's happening elsewhere in the market. And certainly we'd hope to continue working with them well into the future. I think at a bigger level, what they've really done is opened up Ireland in terms of foreign direct investment and just given this huge platform for multinational businesses to come in. So certainly even in terms of things like we talked about attracting and retaining talent, there's now a much broader pool within Dublin, within Ireland, because of all these businesses that have arrived here through the IDA.
Yeah, we were only talking about it. It really has transformed Ireland. I mean, in so many different ways. If you were to look at the, in your own sector in particular, the kind of the trends that are, that are out there and that are going to maybe affect the fintech sector in coming years, is there anything that comes to mind?
Well, the great thing about fintech and payments is that it's always evolving and it evolves at a huge pace. And as much as you compete, you also collaborate. And there's a great saying, we will fail individually or we can thrive collectively. And I think that really comes home within this type of space. I think there's probably three big drivers at the moment. One is the increasing depth and level of regulation, and that's a challenge for all to be able to come and get to grips with, particularly at the EU level. And then the differences between individual markets. I mean, at its heart, it's really about trying to make businesses safer for the end customers or consumers, and it provides a good platform and a baseline for everybody. But there's a huge amount of overhead that creates and complexity for businesses to be able to navigate. I think the second we touched on are things like advancements in technology and AI. Things are always moving ahead and almost leapfrogging. So again, Square, as a hugely innovative business, is already sort of casting its mind to the future. What will be the next generation piece? And we see that in terms of whether it's cloud computing, AI at the moment, but it never ever stands still. So you've got to be able to try and work through all of those signals, like take out the noise, and then figure where do you want to really invest for the future. And I think the third piece, as always, comes back to people. I know this is a podcast primarily around leadership, and ultimately it's because people are what make companies. They're what drive companies. They what create that hunger and motivation to do better. So always trying to make sure you can attract the best talent, and then give that talent like really good opportunities and challenges to be able to work on.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much for chatting with us today. That was fascinating. Thanks a million, John.
Thanks, Anne. Delighted to be here.